Hey y'all, it's Dark Sugar Podcast coming to you fresh out the packet with everything black. Hey y'all, welcome to Dark Sugar Podcast. It is your host Kiana, and today I have my lovely co-creator Emma here with me. I had to get my girl here on this one because y'all know how I feel about colorism. I've done so many episodes about it. We post about it, we talk about it. I'm very passionate about it. And since the whole Danileigh scandal, I've seen like I don't know what you call it. Yeah, resurgence of the colorism topic, especially on TikTok. Especially with our younger generation coming in that's on TikTok, their views and what they think, and they're super impressionable. So I wanted to, it's 2021, obviously we still have to explain and gotta break it down, which is cool, we don't mind. So we're gonna go ahead and get into it. And first I've talked so much about this, I don't want to start. I just can't start. I cannot. But we're going to go in talking about colorism in the home experience, personal experiences. Is there colorism in your family? And then, do you identify by color? So I guess we could ask, do you identify by color, by a shade first?
So this is interesting for me because I am racially ambiguous. So, some people see me right away and know that. And know that I'm something that they just can't put their finger on it. But I, as a kid, I remember having this like racial identity struggle and knowing that my dad was brown and that my mom was white and not really understanding where I fit in the middle of that. So I think from the government standpoint, I'm a white person, right? Like I don't walk through the world as a person of color. And I maybe am subjected to different forms of prejudice, but when it comes to color, I certainly am not melanated enough to deal with what comes with the negative side of colorism.
So growing up, it's weird because, everyone knows I didn't really grow up around black people, right? So I never identified as a shade or a color. It wasn't until college. I mean, I was aware of colorism, but never identified as a color until college, where I was literally in a BSU meeting, and we were talking about colorism, and we were kind of asked, like, what, light skin, dark skin. And I was kind of like, and then they categorized me as dark skin compared to the light skinned people in the room, but I ain't never been called that, and I ain't never that's not an experience of mine. So it's weird because, and it's not until I go to places where there is a larger black community where then I'm considered brown to some people and then light skinned to some people I'm standing next to. But I definitely can realize that I have not experienced the day-to-day colorism struggle that dark-skinned people go through. But the times I have, I do understand how damaging it is, because it's like you're literally judging somebody on something that they can't help and that they can never change. And that really messes with you. That really fucks you up. And the one time I did it, the one time I experienced it, the guy felt bad immediately because I called him out, and I was just like, skirt, and he felt bad and tried to explain himself and whatever, and he knew it was wrong immediately. And in my family, it's really heavy on my dad's side. They're lighter skinned, and I've definitely gotten they're supposed to be compliments, but they're not. No, it's not. And I'm just like, skirt, what do you mean? What are you trying to say? What are you trying to say about my mom? What are you trying to say about? And on my mom's side, my grandma was a twin, and her sister was like way, way lighter than her. And she was treated like very poorly because of that. And it was like a strong difference even in like a family. And, you know, that trickled down to the kids, to my mom, and then like to me. And so I definitely feel the impact of it because it hurt my grandma like her whole life, and she was treated differently her whole life. And it was very evident and apparent, and everyone knew. And it just the damage, the people just don't understand the damage. Your words, your thoughts, the self-hate, it's like we need to start talking about it, what it feels like, why you feel that way. And I think starting to reflect in past experiences, we're able to help like break it down more. But any colorism experiences in your family?
Oh, I have a story for y'all. But first I want to start with this. So to set up the story that I'm going to tell about my family, I have to go back a little bit. We're going to throw it back to the 1800s real quick. So, in 2020, you know, like quarantine life, genealogy and researching my family became like my hobby. And I had done a lot of that stuff before, but I dove like deeper than the average person in 2020. And it just gave me a lot of flashbacks to my childhood of, you know, seeing photos of my dad's family. So my dad is Puerto Rican. And, you know, the further back you go, descendants on my grandmother's side come from basically, you know, Ivory Coast, Ghana, etc. And in my search for family history, I found a lot of census forms where the census was taken in Puerto Rico and my family was listed as Negro. Mm-hmm. They weren't listed as like whatever else, like Puerto Ricans, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that that story is very common. And there's such colorism in the Latinx community, but, you know, for Caribbeans, it's even more highlighted because, you know, our ancestors are from Africa, right? Like my whole identity is this weird mixture of like the European master and the African slave, and then the indigenous people, the Tainos and Arawaks that are native to that land. So it's just, I mean, overall, like talk about generational trauma, you know? But I like, as you were talking, I was learning about like the paper bag test and the 1-drop rule. And for whatever reason, I'm always called back to that when I talk about colorism with people, because depending on the time and where we were, like, how would I have been seen by other people, you know? And certainly, like, again, I don't face the prejudice and the racism that others do. But I just think about that a lot because I'm, you know, looking at my DNA, right? Like, I'm 26% African and a whole bunch of other things. But, and, you know, just looking at, like, my great-grandfather was dark as night. Mm-hmm. You know, like his teeth were white and he was a very black man. I remember the picture. Yeah, and it's like, yeah, and it's a stark difference because he's like in that one photo I'm thinking of, he's standing next to my great-great-grandmother, and she was like European Spaniard and, you know, and other things, and she's like looks like a white person standing next to him. Like, he's so dark and she's so light, and then like that just gave the chocolatey in between that my family is. So I just remember like learning about like that stuff and applying it to my family as a child, and then as I got older, just more and more understanding, because my dad, right, is, to other people they're like, oh, your dad's light, right? Like he's like this weird in-between color. But to other people, he's dark, right? So similar to your experience, like some people see him one way, other people see him a different way. And I was just like recalling that. And I think that my vision of this whole thing is really shaped by his experience because for whatever reason, I know the reason, like my dad, just like a lot of other people of color, has tried his hardest to assimilate to white culture, white Western culture. And, you know, growing up in Arizona, right, and particularly in a Mormon community where everybody's white, him being the only brown person, like that has really caused him to see himself in a different way. And I mean, even now, like he's married to a white woman, and that's like not great for his identity or his like mental health, honestly. But I feel like my sister and I often catch my dad slipping, like, and it's weird because we so much, my sister and I so much embrace our Puerto Rican culture. And, you know, my sister is like many shades darker than I am because her mom is also Puerto Rican. Just like, you know, but we really embrace our culture and our identity and what we look like. And my dad, like, not so much. And it all comes to fruition to my story that I've been waiting to tell. So a couple weeks ago, my sister and I were put in a group chat with my dad, which he often does. He's like, hey, like, wants to talk to us. And he recently got an iPhone, and we're proud of him for that, right? Because he's, you know, coming into the 21st century.
Right.
And, you know, our parents, like, they're learning how to use technology and emojis and whatnot. So, okay, so you know how on... Do you know where I'm going with this? Yes. So, okay, so you know on Apple, right, the update where you can make a emoji of yourself, right? So my dad made this little emoji, and I'm gonna pull it up right now so I'm gonna show Kiana, and we're gonna figure out a way to show you guys, the listener. But so he sends us this emoji of himself doing the little like praise hands, like, you know. And so to paint the picture, my dad's like a medium chocolatey color. I hate using chocolate as the term. I'm so sorry. I just don't know how else to describe it. He's a melanated person, right? He's got a mustache. He's Puerto Rican, curly black hair. So he sends us this little emoji.
Right.
This is a white person.
That's a white guy.
This is a white man.
Right. That's a white guy.
I'm gonna figure out a way to show everybody. But it's like this olive toned man with this little mustache and this like perfectly coiffed white boy hair. Right. And my sister and I were cackling, bro. Like we are just dying laughing. So I literally screenshotted it and I texted my sister and I said, LMFAO, is this what dad thinks he looks like? Oh. And she said, LMAO, I sent him this. And she responds with her little same character. Yeah. And my sister and my dad are the same color. I was going to say, yeah. So she responded with hers and like noticeably, right? The skin tone is noticeably different. And that's what my sister looks like, right? And he goes, LOL, nice. So my sister and I are cackling, he's having an identity crisis, and we just couldn't help but notice, why did you make your little memoji that color? Like, you don't look like that. Yeah, it was the weirdest thing ever. So then I send mine, right? So my little emoji is like little olive tone, kind of curly hair, because that's what I look like, right? This is my perception of what I would look like if I were a emoticon. So then I text my sister and I said, here, I fixed it. This is him.
Yeah,
that's what he looks like. Yeah. Yes. So, okay. So for the listener, I fixed it. So I gave him darker eyebrows, a dark mustache, his actual skin tone, and actual his hair. Like, what in the world? And we were just laughing, cackling. And then, and listen, and I haven't told my dad this. I should bring it up to him, honestly. I'm going to get in his phone one day and fix it for him. Yes, but so that was like a real life recent experience that I had with colorism. And it's just so interesting to see him like experience it and perpetuate it on himself. Yes. And what's crazy is that I know that other people don't see him that way. Like his wife doesn't see him that way. People on the street, if you held up that little emoji to him, they'd be like, who's that? Who is that person?
The white one?
Yes.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. If you held up the one that he made to him, like, who's that person? That's not you. Yeah. Like the hair was brown, and I'm like, you have black hair.
Right.
You have black curly African hair. What? Dang. Explain it. Make it make sense. That hurt. Make it make yes. Yeah. So that was painful and funny, but mostly painful. And I just, like, it was really hard, you know? And I think, and even my sister has had a lot of difficulty with colorism, particularly living in New York. She gets mistaken for every other race but Puerto Rican. Yes, people think she is, like, Middle Eastern.
Puerto Rican to be...
Yeah, people expect Puerto Ricans to look like, I don't know, Brazilians, maybe? Like, white Brazilians?
Yeah, like, more white.
Yes, I don't know what that is, but...
Interesting.
Whenever I meet people, they're like, I don't really know what Puerto Ricans look like. And I'm like, well, we look like everything. Like, I have cousins that have blonde hair, blue eyes. I have cousins that are, like, black, like you would just think they were a black person. Like, you know, so I think that it's really interesting when we talk about, like, race and ethnicity and cultural identity and heritage, because they're not all mutually exclusive, you know? Like, I remember meeting a woman who was Asian, but she was from Mexico, born in Mexico, spoke fluent Spanish, but she looked like an Asian person. And I had to check myself because I was like, boop, you know, but you have to, like, we're so conditioned and socialized to think that, like, this person is from here. Right. That's what this person looks like. And we're just perpetuating a stereotype, right? Like, all Puerto Ricans aren't big booty Latinas that look like J-Lo. Like, we're just not. Not everybody is olive toned. Like, sure, people are tanned, but, you know, they have varying levels of melanin in their skin. But at the end of the day, it's not something that we can change. So I just think it's so interesting that this shapes so much of our culture and our society. Like, you could talk about Band-Aids all day long, honestly. But yeah, I don't know. So that's my most recent example.
That's just that your dad and Khloe Kardashian. Did you hear about the Khloe Kardashian thing?
No, what happened to Khloe?
Okay, so she did the same thing, like the opposite. Because, you know, the Kardashians, they want to be black. We need to do one on that, and culture appropriation. But I forgot what she said, but she tweeted something, and the emoji she used was a very, like, your dad's color emoji. And people were like, why are you using that emoji? Why in black, like, why during Black History Month are you using that emoji? Yes. Like, what is happening? But yeah, it can really, yeah, it affects how you view yourself. And I realize, even from talking to Moses, that a lot of it is usually the energy you're putting out, that's how you feel about yourself, unfortunately. And then my next question is, who does colorism hurt? Because I have seen little, like, in my family, I've literally seen the start of it. Like, little cousins or nieces and nephews of mine, and someone commenting saying, like, either it'll be a negative comment, like, oh, don't go out in the sun. Why are you telling them that when they're like 3 or 4? Like, you know what I mean? Or the opposite, where, oh, you're so pretty and light. Why are you telling her that when she's 2? Do you know what that's doing to her? And she's 2, and I just don't, it hurts us. It's just hurt. It hurts everybody. It hurts dark-skinned people on a systemic level, but then it also hurts light-skinned people, because I'm trying to figure out my words, but that's like do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, I feel. So I think it goes both ways. I think where you're trying to go is like, for people that I want to compare it to like straight hair and curly hair. Like, people who have straight hair want to have curly hair, and people who have curly hair want to have straight hair. You know, like, it goes back and forth. It's not like a one size fits all. But I'm saying, like, we in our society, like, put down people that are really dark, or that whatever, you know, they have darker skin tones. But then white women go to tanning salons and tan their bodies, and we've like the bikini competitors that they like literally spray tan themselves to be like literally dark. Yeah. I'm like, why? Like, that doesn't make sense to me. But then you're gonna wash it all off and you're just walking around like whatever. I just don't like, I think it affects everybody, because like, any way you cut the cake, at the end of the day, we're creating a society where people aren't happy with who they are, with themselves. And the color of your skin has nothing to do with your ability in life, with whether you can own a business, or whether you can perform a certain job correctly, or whether you're a good person or not. Yeah. And it's just, yeah, I think it can be divided in many different ways, but I think ultimately it hurts everybody, because we are stripping ourselves of the opportunity to be around people that are different from us, or that are more diverse than us. And I actually just, that reminds me of, just recently my aunt sent out a passage of an editorial article that my grandmother wrote in, I think, like 1964 or so. And, you know, full transparency, my grandmother was a white Irish woman, right? Catholic, wealthy, but liberal, right? Or, I mean, liberal for her time, but a Democrat. And she and my grandfather were very progressive, particularly in Phoenix, which was a very conservative white place then and now. But she wrote a passage in an article about going to a dinner party. And at this dinner party, there were people of all different races and religions. And I'll have to pull the passage, but she said something to the effect of like, how we deprive ourselves by not allowing ourselves to interact with people from other rich and diverse cultures. And she was talking about how she had felt like she'd been cheated in life by not having those experiences prior, because in exposing herself to socialization with people that were different from her, she was able to learn and grow and, you know, challenge her mind and her perceptions of society. And she wouldn't have been, you know, the activist that she was if she hadn't had those experiences. Right. So, yeah, so I think ultimately it you know, the way that we're all socialized to view color is negative for everyone.
Right. And another thing that now, okay, so Moses and I, we got in it, we were not going at it, but like, we were talking about who does colorism like affect more, right? Because I was telling him, you know, because he was telling me that, okay, back it up. Him and his brother and I are like, we're the same color, I'm pretty sure. So lighter than Moses. And Moses experienced this shift, especially on social media, where like all of a sudden dark-skinned guys are like it. And he's like, oh, when like back in the day it was kind of the opposite and he was made fun of and da-da-da. And so now he's like, oh, okay, so now we're like cool. And I'm like, but they're like still fetishizing you. Like they just, no, like now there is a true appreciation happening. Yes. But then I told him like, just be careful, because like I didn't know how to say it, but I was like, that doesn't make you.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. Yes. Okay. Yes. I know where you're going with this, because I've experienced the same thing. Because when I was different, right? Not a color, but when I was a little girl, I was made fun of because my butt was too big, my lips were too big. I literally in high school had a girl come up to me and ask me, "Is it difficult to eat with such large lips?" And I was like, "What? I just chew my food just like everybody else." And I don't even like, my lips aren't even like that big. They're just bigger than a white person, like, you know. I don't know. Anyway, but yes, so same thing. Like but now it's cool, right? Now I get the, where do you get your lips done? And I'm always like, in the womb, baby girl. This is natural, you know. Yeah. But people are going and paying to like inject their lips and get BBLs and all this to look like people of color. Yeah, exactly. So now it's cool, but back then we were made fun of, you know, because it was cute to be skinny and white and with thin eyebrows and whatnot.
So is it true admiration then?
Okay, so I think it's just really deeply seated jealousy because, number one, capitalism can't win unless everyone's always trying to change something about themselves. Right. That's number one. True. Number two, I think it's jealousy because if you perceive someone to have something that you don't have, you're either going to, depending on your character, right? You're going to compliment them and go about your way, or you're going to put that thing down and say, that doesn't matter. What I have is better than what you have. Right. So think about white people, right? My skin's better than yours. I'm more intelligent than you are, etc. Yeah. And that just has ballooned in society. I'm channeling that moment in Mean Girls when Katie is wearing something, a bracelet or something, and Georgina is like, oh my god, I love your bracelet, and she actually hates it, right? That I feel like is just a metaphor for whiteness, honestly. Yeah,
that's what it is. And so I had to remind Moses, like, just because dark-skinned men, like, just because y'all are popping on Instagram, hold on, wait, check those likes, because I was just like, hold on a minute. And we always talk about the way dark-skinned women are treated. And like, even I forgot what the statistics, I'll have to actually look at it, but it was on that dating app where like black women were like the least desirable, and I'm like, oh my god. But then I look at, but it's like, so it's just crazy, and the stereotypes, and the darker, the worse the stereotype, and the more it affects you in society. And like my cousin, because I told you like what she was telling me, I was appalled that she's ever gone through any of that, or that the color of her skin has to be a factor in the way she moves in life, because it's just crazy. And then it's so ingrained in our brain that half the time people don't even know they're doing it. They can't say you're pretty without being like, for a dark skinned girl, like I'm just like, wow, it just, the microaggressions within colorism, that was something that was new to me and made apparent for me. But okay, and then the next question, what is light skin privilege? And I think that was the most discussed issue, because especially throwing it back to the Danileigh situation, the topic of discussion was when she was like, why can't I make this song for my light-skinned baddies? What's the problem? And her not understanding the problem.
Well, like the whole point is you can be like, make a baddie anthem, but you don't need to make it about skin color. Right. Because that is a characteristic that nobody can change about themselves. Because I was born a mixed person, like, I would say that I have pretty privilege, but I have no power over that. Like, the DNA just did what it wanted to do. Like, my parents are attractive people. I'm an attractive person. My dad happens to be melanated. Like, I had no power over that, Mm-hmm. And I think I take, like, personal offense to people that, like, put mixed people down, particularly people that are like considered light skin, right? Like, people are like, oh, that's a light skin thing, right? Like, oh, blah blah blah, like, they make fun of people that are light skin. Yeah. And I feel like I feel like I take personal offense to that, because I'm like, none of us can change that. Like, I didn't say, maybe I did, I don't know. But I didn't say, like, this is my dad and this is my mom and I'm going to look like this. Mm-hmm. People just look like that, And I think it's crazy how, like, it's just become such a commodity to be this, olive toned with curly hair and like green or blue eyes with big lips and a big nose and, you know, all these features that are Black features. Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's so odd and so crazy that we just even put so much emphasis on it, because it's not anything that any of us can control.
Right. It's just, it's what I think sucks is that it's just like, man, we still haven't come out of the slavery shit.
No.
Because that's what it's from. No. And we still put it's.
People still carrying around brown paper bags now.
Yeah, and I'm just like, this is really, it's so deep. And I think, you know, uncovering that in, I feel like we've been uncovering a lot of things. Well, not uncovering us, but other people have been learning about, society has been uncovering the dirt that America has been hiding, and the things that are still like woven into our history, the painful things. And of course, the story with your dad actually reminded me of the next topic of like skin bleaching and skin lightening, because have you seen homeboy Sammy Sosa? He's like pink right now, I think. he like, and you know, people make fun of him and whatever, and I'm just like, oh, my soul hurts that, you know, him, that him and so many other people of color just feel the need to they're pressured to do that.
Yeah.
I'm told they need to.
I know, honestly, there's a documentary on Netflix about it. It's a whole other topic, honestly, but that is very applicable to, like, this whole problem is just, it manifests in so many different ways. Yeah. So something that I just, you know, kind of came to mind as we were talking is just this week, Representative Dean Phillips, a Democrat from Minnesota, you know, they were doing hearings for a Marjorie Taylor Greene, to remove her from her committee positions. And there's, you know, been a lot going on at the Capitol as of late. And so Representative Phillips actually stood up. He's a white man. He stood up, and on the floor of the House of Representatives, he gave a public apology. Because he you know, told the story that on January 6th, during the, you know, insurrection at the Capitol, that he and about 20 other colleagues were hiding. And they were, you know, there's the Democratic side of the House and then the Republican side. And that, you know, they were on their respective sides because that's where they were sitting, but they were hiding, huddling together and figuring out what they were going to do next. And he went on in his speech to talk about how he was obviously stricken with fear that he was going to lose his life, and that there was no way out. And, you know, he's talking about how the only thing that he had to arm himself with was a pencil, and that he had this, like, reckoning, like, what am I going to do? You know, fight or flight type of feeling. And then in that moment, he spoke up very loudly to his Democratic colleagues and told them that they should all go over to the Republican side of the room and try to blend in with the Republicans so that the insurrectionists trying to break into the Capitol would perceive them as Republicans instead of Democrats. And he, you know, in his speech went on to say that, you know, many people around him, including his daughters, spoke up about that moment because he had retold the story. And he said that in that moment, he truly realized what white privilege was, because his Democratic colleagues of color were not able to go across to the Republican side and blend in. And, like, watching him give that speech was really interesting, because so often people don't acknowledge when they've done wrong or when they've said something wrong. And it was really powerful to watch someone who is a Democrat, right, and thinks that they're progressive and liberal and I love everyone and whatever, realize that he had perpetuated white privilege, and also not recognize that his employees of color can't take their skin color off. They can't blend in. And I thought that was a really powerful moment, because it also, you know, ties back to colorism and, you know, people who are white passing and people who aren't. And these things in society that literally come down to life or death based on what color you are.
Yeah, totally. And I think what Emma and I want to get across is the impact it has on you and other people. It's based on a false system of beliefs. It doesn't mean anything. And I know a lot of people who suffer from colorism in the way they hold on to it because they have nothing else to hold on to. And I understand that too, but that hurts you, and that hurts you when you project that onto others. And that goes into my next question of what will you do to break the cycle? And I think talking about it more, learning about it, listening, because I realize I have to watch what I say, and I have to think about what biases I have and unpack that. And, I was looking at my 23andMe, and there's this part where it's like skin pigmentation, and it has like percentages of what the percentage is, like your percentage of what your skin color could be. And I have like all of them, and they're varying down like to lightest. But I was like, wow, like, theoretically my kid could come out like anything. So like, how would I treat them? What would I teach them about their skin? How would they be treated? And it just goes into this whole, it's definitely going along with the other talks I have to have with my future kids because they're Black or because they're whatever. Mm-hmm. So I think definitely talking about it, talking to your kids, because it's a topic that needs to be routine, like the sex talk. Like, you need to check in on your kids and ask, who are you into? What do you think about these type of people? What do you think? And then like listen to what they say. Cause I can tell, like, I know a lot of people who their parents maybe weren't necessarily colorist, but they picked it up from school, their peers and whatever. And no one maybe asked or checked in on them or whatever, but it's an important topic.
Yeah, I think for me, just calling it out in myself when I'm noticing things that I'm thinking, or, some sort of, a placent bias or affirmation bias that I have where, if you catch yourself thinking something about someone as it's related to their skin color, then you should stop yourself and say, like, why do I think that? Or why am I going down that thought path? I have really been challenging myself to make sure that when I'm describing another person to someone, I don't start with their ethnicity or their identity, right? I don't say like, oh, my friend Moses, who's Black. Mm-hmm. Like, I just describe the situation or describe the story or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I just completely will leave their color or their ethnicity out of it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. We have to be better about challenging ourselves to unlearn what we have been socialized to believe about ourselves and others, and just make sure that we are always challenging the conversation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. I definitely agree. And I'm excited because this is the first Colorism episode of 2021. We will be talking about this more as more things come up, because they will. People be trifling. But as usual, keep listening and stay safe.